This conference will now be recorded.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have some speakers this evening, which is nice. I'm happy to introduce Lori Fitzgerald, and she's got two topics. Some people come. This one is there time for a lot?
Quick topics, hopefully. So the first is that I just wanted to bring the Arts Alliance operating principles before the board to get approval for those and for the membership structure. So the Arts Alliance is a committee, a subcommittee of the Community Development Commission. And as part of the objectives of the comprehensive plan, the group is concerned with supporting and marketing artistic programs, activities, and events. So we have, we're going to have between 5 and 9 voting members. Each of the following 5 organizations will have at least 1 voting member, and that's the Community Development Commission, the Sinfonietta, the Art Center, the Adirondack Film Society, and the Historical Society. And then we have at-large members from the community as well, so Nash Wyckoff, Ingrid Van Slyke, Joan Kelleher, several other people. So we are currently working on a master plan for how we're going to commission the public art, where we're going to put it, how we're going to request it, how we're going to decide, but we'll be the organization that will vet it for appropriateness. And to make sure that it's in keeping with what we as a community are looking to. So, your questions?
So this is a subcommittee of the Lake Placid Community Development Commission group. Typically, this is a new subcommittee, and it does involve people who are not currently appointed. I think that's what you're performing.
Yeah.
And the liaisons from the 2 boards are provided. Art is providing that for the various committees, and I think Emily Politi.
Lens when necessary from Bruce.
This is a project that many communities support, and frankly, I look at it with some favor because I believe it can bring some life to Main Street that Lake Placid could benefit from. I know over the years growing up here, there's been different activities on the street, but this is sort of bringing, I think, with the current conditions on Main Street and some empty storefronts, this group has been active in trying to help keep the image of life on Main Street. I guess that's a fair statement. So
yeah, so that was our first project, is putting those the artistic imagery in some of the windows. We still got a couple more in play, but because we don't have a process for commissioning art, so far all of the work has just come from the voting members of the committee. So we're a little bit stalled after this until we can figure out, so we can get that master plan in place so that we're sure that it's a fair and equal process.
and basically, as I understand it, this committee, as with all the subcommittees of the Development Commission, would provide guidance and recommendations to the village and town boards.
Right, and it'll go beyond Main Street. I mean, the Main Street redesign will be a major initiative for us in getting art into there, but we'll likely zone out the town and create art zones so that we can create some cohesiveness with whatever it is that we do. And they'll be in residential and in business districts. And we also are probably going to, which we can undertake now, is do an inventory of current public art to determine if it's in the right place, to determine if it's in disrepair or needs cleanup or anything else that we can do. So
I think it would be a nice addition to the work that the Appearance Committee of the Commission does already, but it has a specific purpose. And in my opinion, Lake Placid has always been known and thought of as a sports community, but there is a even with the Olympics or with the upcoming Winter University Games, there are cultural component requirements of all of these activities. So I think this is a good time for this discussion to be taking place as far as our board is concerned.
it won't just be visual arts, so we're trying to figure out how we're going to incorporate performing arts and potentially writing and poetry and that kind of thing as well. So universally, and also cover history and culture while we're at it.
I can remember summers when Joan Frank was first operating the summer theater here in Lake Placid. That she'd get in her Ford Mustang convertible with 3 or 4 of the actors, and they'd drive around the neighborhoods just to create some enthusiasm and, hey, we're here. So, I do think, that was a time, it's certainly a different time than now, but our cultural community has been growing, the arts are growing, and certainly we should be supporting them in their endeavors because I think it complements other aspects of our community life. Comments from anybody?
Great.
On that one? Would anybody care this evening to entertain a motion supporting the operating principles of this subcommittee?
Second.
It's quick. Any further discussion?
Pretty non-confrontational.
We'll call a motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thanks for the work you're doing on this, Lori. I was thinking back to last winter when you were working on the projects in that cold winter weather, and your work has certainly been well appreciated by the community.
Seems like a lifetime.
So thank your team members, and we'll look forward to supporting you.
I'm doing topic 2 now.
Yeah.
Holiday Village Stroll. So I'm actually here to ask permission to use the park, but let me give you a little bit of an overview of what the plan is for this
Which
year.
park? We have a
It's-
couple.
It's park. The park. So it's going to be a mini holiday stroll because we had to come up with a way to make a really high touch event, no touch. So we will be doing pretty much everything virtually. In terms of Mintz Park, we're looking to decorate the band shell, decorate the railings. We'll work with Charisse. We did that last year on getting some trees. We may put up some swags along the fence. And then there's an outside chance that we would try to figure out how to have, well, there's 2 things, how to have music there without a human being. Or only, periodic monitoring by a human being. And we're also trying to figure out how we could do with a screen some sort of virtual Santa. So that they can't sit on Santa's lap, they can't, do story time with Santa, but we think that we can set it up so that we can have changeable mics that Eric Wilson has, and kids could go to the mic and they could talk with Santa and give them their wish list. And then there'll be other ways that we can engage as well, but we were going to do all of that in Mintz Park. Crafts, for example, will all be pre-bagged. It'll be at the hotels, and we'll have a lot of stuff at the visitor center as well. We're talking about doing some sort of scavenger hunt to get people into stores because we won't really have shopping dollars because we're not really going to market outside of the community too much just because we can't handle the crowds. So I'm trying to think we're doing the virtual 5K for the Jingle Bell Run. We're going to do virtual story time. I think we're going to do 2. We're going to do 1 in the morning and then 1 with your PJs in the evening. So that assumes that the rules that apply today apply in December.
The Yule log, that's probably not going to happen this year yet. Too much.
Yeah, someone else have to learn how to do that.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see what we can accomplish under the framework of virtual experiences that will help. And this is a year when I think we're all uncertain as to what the next 3 months, the next quarter for our local Main Street and economy are expecting. We don't know.
Our social media feed is indicating that people intend to come. They're asking about it, so we just aren't going to do the big push that we usually do because if we get the crowds that we usually get, it's a lot.
It'll be a problem.
And because it's just a lot of logistics, so it's going to take a lot of bodies to figure it out.
I know another inquiry unrelated to this, but there was an inquiry about doing a fireworks display here at New Year's Eve as a private event. And obviously local legislation number one prohibits private fireworks over the lake. And secondly, COVID-19, there's no way we can control the gathering of people. So it's just not going to happen. Wouldn't happen anyway under our current legislation unless it were a public event and it was sponsored by either Florida or the
Roost.
or possibly the village. So that's where we're at. As far as the use of Mids Park goes, it sounds somewhat similar to last year, just without people. And,
We hope that there'll be a tree, that you guys will continue to put up a tree and light the tree, but we'll light the tree when nobody's looking.
I think we can accomplish the tree and all of that.
Surprise items.
But yes, so I think this year we're certainly going to take some extraordinary efforts to make people feel that it's a festive time period, and given the energy that our community can put forth at times when it wants to, I think I certainly look forward to it. I would have expected it would have been this mayor's last year of offering Christmas greetings, and we'll see how that's done
It'll
virtually.
probably be nice and warm now. We don't have to be outside all day.
Yes. So anything else you want to add to your comments on the story? Gentlemen,
You just need a motion from us then to use Mids Park, so moved.
Second.
Art seconds.
Just under discussion, we're just you're gonna play it by ear, or whatever the government.
Yeah, the rules change, the
gonna be.
rules change, yeah.
Okay.
So we are making our plans with the rules that we have today.
Okay,
If those rules change, all bets are off,
okay.
Or change.
or stop completely.
Let's hope they get better, not worse. There's no other questions for Lori at this point. Call the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Shouldn't have to ask that even. Any abstentions? Thank you, Lori, for that. I said thanks for the work your group is doing so well.
If anyone wants to volunteer.
It's good thing Melania is on the board. It's good thing Melania is on the board. She gets-
Hey, Carol Nebulous is, welcome Carol this evening, and Carol has a particular topic represents some concern, I think. That I'd like to have you describe, Carol.
Sure. Well, I think I'm representing St. Eustace Church, but I really think I'm representing much of Main Street. I know that the bookstores had particular problems, so I'm like the pigeon poop patrol here, okay? So I know this is an increasing problem because in the middle of September, I did an extensive weeding of the front walkway at our church.
Mhm.
And I sat on the walkway, I weeded, I sat and weeded. And then, and I saw some birdseed at the bottom of stairs. I just wondered how it got there, but I didn't know. All right, so fast forward, I get a call from our secretary who now, about 2 weeks later, goes out the front door and says, is panicked because the entire sidewalk is blackened by pigeon poop. So she says, someone's got to come over here and clean it up. So I came over and power hosed the whole walkway, the steps and the sidewalk area. And the whole time the flock of pigeon is flying over, and she was sweeping the steps. As I was doing that, Madeline from across the street, Hayes Street, comes out and said, well, I saw the woman that's doing this. I couldn't believe it. I said, there's actually someone feeding the birds. And she said, yes. I said, well, did you tell her to stop? And she said, no, because it was your property. So I said, please, do you know who this person is? And she said, no. So bottom line is about a week later, I get a call and she has witnessed this woman again. Went out, asked her who it was, and said her name was Dee Dee, and she lives above EMS. And Madeline politely said, well, on behalf of St. Eustace Church and myself, we'd like you to stop feeding the birds. And she said, well, there's no ordinance, I've already checked. And I even got permission from the DEC to feed the pigeons. She's a little loony. Okay, so and she was really indignant with Madeline. So the next, and then you mentioned how Roby gave her permission. So I called Roby up, and Roby in fact did not give her permission. In fact, warned her if she continued, he would not renew her lease from above the annex. So then it started, we thought it was getting better. Okay, I needed just a sweep as opposed to spray, power spray this, and then all of a sudden Wednesday, Keela Rogers and Nancy Beatty come out of the church meeting, and once again, she's there feeding all the birds. And they tell her, you know, you can't do this, and it's just making a mess, and it's a safety hazard. And she said, but I'm so proud, because when I started, I had about 10, and now I have at least 50 in this flock.
Well,
I saw-
from her perspective, I feel like
Yeah.
it's an accomplishment.
Okay, so let me just say you, and tell you what, if you're, like, I noticed this when I'm in church on Sunday around 10 or 11, that big St. Eustace window faces south and a bit east. When the flock flies off of our steeple onto the hockey store across the street and then over on top of EMS, the whole window just is blackened by the shadow. So you can imagine how big this flock is. This morning I get a call from Madeline. So once again, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's back. But Madeline says she's sweeping up furiously with a rake and a broom over there this morning. And I just recall how this woman, when I confronted her, and I was not nice at all about confronting her, she said, well, I can continue to feed the birds and I'll clean up after them. Well, it just doesn't work that way. So this morning I went over after I got the review about her cleaning, 2 hours later, and I have pictures here. So you can see the results of she cleans, but then 2 hours later, they're sitting on the roof, pooping on the sidewalk. And it's all just, it's not great, but I'm going to share them with you anyway.
Well, passing those around, I guess I'm a little unclear. So she lives above EMS.
Yeah.
Does she walk up Hay Street and feed them in front of the church out of spite? Is that what's going on?
Right? Oh, I don't think so. No.
So why would she go up Hay Street to feed, or where's the actual feeding spot?
Okay, the actual feeding stop began on the hill in front of our front door, St. Eustace.
So on the grass?
On the grass and on the stairs.
Okay, so if she's thinking it's a park-ish type situation where it's actually private property for the church, correct?
I think she's just interested in feeding the birds because she cares about them.
No.
I mean, in fact, she told me she used to feed them across Mirror Lake somewhere, but she was told to leave. So she came to Main Street.
Although Jesus would appreciate the kindness towards the animals.
Absolutely, because she.
However, it's interfering with everyone's
Well, she
observance.
also called me a non-Christian for not going along with this, but. The point is that my point to this was when I was reading, I mean, there was a time when there were just a few of them and it wasn't a problem. But since then, the bookstores had to replace an air conditioner because they were nested in the air conditioner. And they are going up and down Main Street. And if you even walk in front of our church Sunday morning, I mean, people just don't even want to come up the stairs anymore or sit on our benches. So my point, I don't know where to go with this. You know, we can't sterilize the things, or can we? Or part of the problem is just getting her to stop because they now have an official feeding ground. And Roby, I believe, has threatened her to not renew her lease, but that doesn't prevent her from continuing to feed the pigeons, whether it's on our property or someplace else.
DEC, we did check into this a little bit. DEC does have some rules and regulations about the feeding of wildlife and birds, and certainly wildlife. But interestingly enough, it does not extend to
It doesn't include birds, moose, bear,
birds, moose,
deer.
bear, deer,
I forget the fourth animal,
and
but
that
yeah.
type of thing, but
Not
there's no regulation there. However, from previous experience in my former work, I'm aware of the fact that when pigeons accumulate in an area, the droppings that they're leaving behind them are, in fact, if they accumulate, are toxic.
Well, it's coccidioidomycosis. There's, and in
Right.
fact, coccidioidomycosis is now in 22 states.
And I just had made a note when you started speaking that you were weeding and you were probably exposing yourself to that toxic mess without realizing it.
So I thought you were a vice president of a bank. You're a bird handler, fire?
Sometimes we get involved with real estate that's been left exposed, and
Oh, okay.
pigeons are well known for congregating in
You are.
vacant buildings.
Much more around it.
Just to clarify your question,
Yes.
when she was told by Madeline was representing us,
Yeah.
not to feed the birds on the St. Eustace property, that's when she came up with the idea that Roby was giving her permission to feed the birds in Hay Street.
Mm.
Okay, so that's when I marched down to Roby's office, and he said, absolutely not, he never did that. That's when I called Art.
I know Roby a lot, but I didn't think he owned Hay Street, so I don't know.
Well, he didn't do it, she was lying. Okay, she's-
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the church has every right to prohibit her from using the church for purposes they choose not to want it used for, and you should take every advantage of that if you need assistance.
Well, even if she's not feeding them on church property now, you can see
I
that
know what you're going to say, it'll be someplace else. That's the first step.
our steeple is the staging area for these pigeons.
We've had pigeon presence from time to time along Main Street, and then again, they've been gone, and I'm assuming that there's a reason why they congregate. Certainly feeding would be one. I do not know, and we did a little research to see what we could come up with in terms of laws. You know, we actually have our watershed group with the village board's permission to post signs along Mitz Park shore and other locations around their lake, asking people to please not feed the ducks. And it strikes me that, and again, the reason for it is that what they leave behind isn't pleasant for the public. And I know down on the mill pond, we had that problem. We finally put a split rail fence up and put wiring along the bottom. And that minimized the droppings that were left behind, but it didn't completely.
So the
eliminate.
droppings in that picture are only 2 hours worth. So you can imagine how it accumulates overnight or even in 2 days.
I can well imagine.
I didn't even-
If in fact, I know you were hoping that maybe we could pass an ordinance. The process for passing the local law is, it takes time. We have to, first of all, create a draft of the proposed local law. And we have to publish it and create a public hearing and then ultimately file it with the state before we make it active. I would guess, Janet, we might be looking at a couple of months.
Yes, and I think would have to be some research if we can do this.
Even if we're allowed to do it.
I know, I mean, I don't know whether you could get the public health department involved in here. as a public
They
health.
already told us that it's on us. We asked Essex County Public Health.
About the watershed, too. They don't want the droppings from the ducks and whatever on the road to wash into the lake.
That's a good thought, and certainly, since they have some experience with other wildlife of this nature, maybe there's some help we could get there. I think the most important thing we can do is to educate the community to what is happening, and that, the location means if they're not congregating on and I've seen them myself, I went out and looked. If they're not congregating on the steeple of the church, they are also congregating over the sidewalks right down Main Street. I'm reminded a few years ago that the Wilkins, I think John Wilkins brought to my attention that they were, a few years ago, were an extreme bother on his building. And unfortunately, this is dropping on the street. Again, my information is that those droppings are in fact toxic. I don't know how much of it takes to create that
Well, it's
standard.
a respiratory, it can be a respiratory illness, but as well as a cutaneous type of illness with lesions. And it can be chronic and it can be deadly also.
Well, and the other thing is we are trying to attract people to Main Street, not
And, speaking of the watershed, as they pass from Arcego over to on top of the hockey shop, I mean, that's right there. That's where all the droppings go. So then it's washed down Main Street into the drains.
You know, the watershed is only a volunteer, please do not, they don't.
Right,
have any enforcement.
What if they could say that they're against it?
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well, and it may be more than that. They may have information because they do take the leadership on posting against the feeding of geese or ducks. So I'm just thinking that we may be able to get some information there. What we have to figure out is how to discourage the birds from wanting to be on Main Street. Clearly, stopping the feeding would be the most
So
appropriate.
what can I say to this woman?
I think you as a representative of the church or whoever in the church has the authority can flat out tell her that she may not use the church property, which is,
And she'll say, well, I'll feed them in Hay Street then. Then what?
then she's on public property. And I think, again, we'll have to talk with our law enforcement people about what can be done about that.
Well, we talked to Billy, there isn't any law on the books. Unless we make a law, there isn't anything that can be done.
Well,
But if she's creating a public nuisance on our public streets, they can encourage her not, I mean, it's a public nuisance. She can't be in the road doing it. And the sidewalk, if it's a public nuisance, if she's creating a public nuisance, I think there might be something they can do.
I just find it odd that she's not doing this in Bitts Park, where there's a place to sit and just.
Well, what-
feed.
no one there
either.
Well, I'm not saying we're encouraging that, but I'm just, you would traditionally think of someone feeding birds at a park or along where there's a bench and so on and so forth.
Well, we have benches.
Walking up a hill is not, I would say, she must be very passionate if she's gonna walk up a hill, but maybe pigeons, so I don't know.
Does anyone in your congregation have a falcon?
have a water-
Falcon.
We have BB guns.
How about bats?
Well, the first thing she throws in my face is that there's no law against it. And she
And
can't.
she's apparently investigated that and we've investigated and confirmed that there is no direct regulation that we're able to find. However, the fact that it's a disgusting event for other people and potentially maybe a health hazard seems to me to have some value.
How do I explain that to her when I've already told her that? I mean, she can't even walk on the sidewalk without stepping on it.
That's where we're going to have to do we'll have to investigate and see if we can find a way to
Persuade her.
persuade her that this is the wrong thing to do. It's wrong for people's health.
Okay.
It's wrong for the birds because frankly, people don't want them on their property and they don't want to be walking in the muck.
Maybe
that
buy her a
they
pigeon
design.
for her apartment. She can just feed
So,
it.
quickly though, we can investigate if we can get that law.
Oh, we can do that.
We can do that much. But the Department pass a law if it's allowed.
Well, the only issue is, as I explained earlier, the procedure for doing that is
That's all right.
time
At
consuming.
least it might happen, for
And it
sure.
might also help us from future years with the
Exactly.
same issue.
Could be creative in the fact that what she's doing on the road can be considered littering.
It is
See?
littering.
Okay, so may I say that I spoke with the village board and they're in favor of her stopping it?
We'd certainly encourage her to find a more appropriate place for that activity, and it hopefully is not any place where the public has to enjoys.
You can also add on to what the mayor is saying, that because of the situation now, the village board is investigating having to enact a local law in order to allow it for everyone. So if she can't find somewhere else that's more suitable, then no one's going to be able to do that at all. So maybe that will motivate her to do that, move somewhere else.
Well, what it does is
That's all I can.
it provides enforcement and fines that we don't have on the books.
Yeah, well, this is one circumstance. I can't say this is like a growing trend. I don't see it on Twitter. I'm just,
I mean, I gotta believe that other communities have to deal with this.
We've had it from time to time
Yeah, I
over
mean,
the
like,
last
around the
60
state.
years of my life, 70 years. I've seen it occasionally, and there's something that attracts them here, and then for long periods of time, they're not here.
Well, that's just it. I mean, that's my feeling is that if they don't get fed, they'll eventually move to where they can find food. So our goal is to stop her from feeding them.
That's
And
what-
even after that, there might be a month lag before these pigeons are gone.
But when they fly off your roof, I can tell you where one of the places they go, it's my roof.
Is it-
Oh, I get up to 50 of them up there at a time. And then when
So
they,
they're all over the place then.
They used to be at Lisa G's.
Mhm.
I mean, you watch them, they'll fly around the valley all in formation and they all flap off together. You ought to hear them banging around up there. They make a lot of noise.
But
They snuck into your window?
they've never been a problem. I know that because I've swept and I've weeded and, I never had a problem. Anyway, I appreciate your help, sort of.
The wheels of government are slow.
May I say that you're in the process of creating an ordinance?
Well, that's,
Investigated.
I'm
that's,
looking into one.
we will investigate. Maybe we'll name the ordinance after this good lady.
Mina Didi Blah.
Can you give her credit for it?
State bears are, hopefully.
Well, yes.
It's unfortunate that she doesn't heed your advice. But, yeah, I guess where do we go?
I hate to say this, but I don't think she's all there. Just the way she lies about what Roby says and she lies about what Karen and Nancy say, and you know what I mean? She, after I was in Roby, she actually said, oh, but Roby wrote me a letter saying I was allowed to do it. I mean, she's delusional.
Well,
Anyway,
amongst other things, I'm hopeful that our press coverage picks this up as an article that really has some public concern.
it
Well-
will?
And you as a,
The press is on.
here,
Oh, gosh.
you also have, say Eustis also has, it's a private property to have her not put birdseed on the property.
That's
And as Janet pointed out, you have the right, she can't put it out on the street or any of the village property. So,
But how do I explain that?
I mean, at least that's something you can tell her.
What, she's not
She-
allowed to put it
Well, you
on
could
the
say
street?
Eustis,
If she's littering and trespassing,
See, we want to keep, but see, this gets difficult because we want her to enjoy our front lawn. We want her to come and sit on the steps and sit on the benches. We just don't want her to feed the birds anywhere around St. Eustace. Or for that matter, any place that anybody's going to be walking that are going to be hit by bird poop. It's,
it could be any place on Main Street.
so
It's really her act of feeding and leaving quantities of seed that is.
and her
attractive.
intentions of wanting to clean it up are good, but it just doesn't help at all when 2 hours later,
Yes.
they don't poop one time a day.
But I do think that she, to the extent you're able to, representing the church owners, encourage her from that activity while she's on church property. I think that would make
And I may say that the village is investigating.
very more than well.
Thank you.
and I'll check with the water, I mean, with their members tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you can see it washing down.
Yeah, because when you scrape it up, it just goes into the road.
Well, and also when I get out there with the power
For
spray,
now,
it goes right down the steps into the
Anything
road.
toxic that's washing into Mirror Lake just adds to the headache that we have with Mirror Lake and, stormwater runoff, which we only think, we focus on salt, which we know is a problem. But maybe we have some other problems that we're not so,
Brendan test
You might-
for.
we might want to talk to Brendan about that.
About thinking they'll go in.
Okay. Carol, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We can also send you prayers.
Hasn't worked, has it?
Don't give up faith.
Anyway,
Don't
thank
give
you.
up.
Thanks for taking my hysterical call the other night.
All right, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, yeah.
Trying to find an appropriate way to live with nature and wildlife.
Pigeons are wildlife.
No, I almost had like 2 of them this morning. I was driving down Main Street on my way back from Saranac Lake, and there was a line of them across the crosswalk in front of St. Eustace. And they
They're
don't
at the crosswalk.
leave.
You know, the patient
I
ended,
stopped.
she stopped.
Because
waited
otherwise
for
they
2
were
hours
gonna,
for them to walk back.
they were gonna hit me.
They walked across using the
There was a
crosswalk.
whole slew in the crosswalk. Whole
We
slew
have
of them.
people that don't use the
I
crosswalk.
know, there was a
Jesus.
whole line of them, and then they flew up on top of the cap.
Well, it seems like it's becoming an issue, or has become an issue. Moving on to the, we'll continue to investigate our opportunities on that. And, the idea of an ordinance so that we've got some kind of enforcement
And I'll see it.
isn't a bad idea,
Okay.
if we can do it. Okay, moving on, under section 3, clerk items, we have the village board minutes of meeting of October 5th.
So moved.
Second moves, Peter seconds. Assuming there's no comments or additions or omissions, we'll call the motion then. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'm happy to report this evening, the next item. I believe, Anita, this is the last of our labor negotiations, which are a total of 5 this year that we had to go through. But I'm happy this evening to report that the negotiations with the CSCA, who represents the highway department, and I believe our traffic control officers, reached a point where I was able to agree. There are not a lot of changes from the current agreement that expired July 31st. But we did add there are a couple of amendments in section 1 under various positions that are covered by CSCA. We are adding and amending the term of working supervisor. This is a person almost like in the electric department, you have a foreman. In this case, we refer to them in the highway department or as working supervisors, to be added to the wage scale. All wages for this coming year will increase, effective August 1st, will increase 66 cents per hour for August, the year beginning August 1, 2020, August 1, 2021, and August 2022. The working supervisor wage will be $24.57 effective August 1. And if you had the scale in front of you, you would see that that fits in with good reason to positions in that department. The deductibles for health insurance, as is across the board with the village, our health plan deductibles are increasing to $1,600 for a single plan, $3,200 for 2-person, for employee and child and/or family plan. Co-insurance is increasing to 20%. Out-of-pocket maximum increases slightly to $3,200 and $6,400, as I understand it. The agreement as it was completed, those are the essential changes. I believe the department has already acted or voted and accepted, and this evening I presented to this board for acceptance.
Second.
Scott, any further questions or discussions on it? If not, I would call the motion. In favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Well, that will eventually get reduced to a final contract. And by the way, it's extended to 3 years, so the successor mayor gets a little bit of a break. All of them are out there, I believe, for that same term right now. We've got I'm missing some pieces here. There we go. Next request we have, item C, is a request of the Highway Department for a title change, and this is coming from Brad Hathaway as DPW Superintendent. As of August 1st, and this would be retroactive if approved, I would like to change the titles for Michael Godot and Tyler Preston from outside foreman to working supervisors in accordance with the CSA contract that I just presented those changes on amendments.
What's the difference?
Pardon?
What's the difference?
They're going for, I just had the contract.
Not in pay, I'm just, what responsibility, I'm just wondering what the difference.
Instead of having an inside and an outside foreman, they're both, because they were outside foremans to begin with, they're getting rid of the inside foreman because Greg doesn't really have any foreman obligations, and making them working supervisors because that's actually what's in the Essex County labor law. There is no classification for foreman in the highway department or any DPW. So they have to be classified as working supervisors instead, because they handle everything while on the clock, whether it's overnight or during the day.
So this request really is driven by civil service.
Yes.
Okay. So it's actually conforming their job descriptions to what civil service provides for. They don't provide for the.
We looked it up to see if we could use the same classification. We couldn't, so we had to switch it.
With that explanation, is there a motion to approve this? Scott, Peter seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, for that. The next item we have, and I didn't bring that folder down with me, I apologize. Chief Moore and I, as you know, the governor has by order directed every municipality that has a law enforcement unit, whether it be village, town, or county, or city, to conduct an undertaking to examine the policies of our police department and establish the idea of establishing any necessary reforms, or, and they refer to it as Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. The leverage that he imposes on this order, which is number 203,
That's right.
which is an executive order, is that for those communities that fail to do that and provide it by April 1st, their access to certain funding from New York State will be suspended. In our case, in our police department, we don't derive much direct support from New York State. However, in other departments, DPW in particular, our CHIPS money is included in the list of items that can be withheld. That would not be helpful to the village. So looking at it, and there's a 100-page directory, most of it is descriptions as to why this needs to be done, and then a section of the book that tells you basically what to do. The department is re-examining its policies. That's part of what Lexicon is intended to do, and they're engaged in doing those steps. We are required, however, or I'm required as mayor, to pursue the governor's order, and it does involve public activity in terms either of a task force, or in our case, we're thinking it may be a presentation at large, but we have to do the work first. We've met with a consultant who comes out of Boston Spa, who is offering her services. And I think after an hour interview with this lady, the chief and I are recommending that we engage this person. The company's called OILO, Olio. Her name is Teresa Wilson, and I have to say she's, in meeting with her, I think I felt comfortable that this is the right type of person for Lake Placid, and that we, therefore, I'm recommending this evening that we engage in a consulting service agreement with her that will carry a cost of $4,500.
It's a nominal.
There is a possibility, I know the chief has been working with the county sheriff's people a little bit, and we're not sure how all of that may fit in. But clearly at this point, I think this is not a function that I can just simply put on the staff of the village. It needs to be handled in a manner which will conform to the governor's orders. And also, more importantly, perhaps will engage the community in this discussion in a way that can be meaningful and helpful.
So I just have a few questions before we move forward. It says create a community dialogue of stakeholders that includes village mayor, Craig Randall, police chief, William Moore, and additional community members. So you're going to, I think it's incredibly important that that this individual creates a very, or at least investigates and brings in a very diverse, as opposed to a curated listing of people. That seems to be the case. Because it seems, then there's, within the sort of the scope of work, publish an amendment, or they talk about public comment, draft a proposal, and public comment. So there will be listening and learning, and then they will have I want to say the authorization from the village board to seek out a diverse sort of group to speak with, and then the public comment is another situation where once they have, much like a lot of our drafts of public law, so on and so forth, the community will have a chance to review it and then add their comments into that. Is that what I'm reading under the public comment?
That is correct.
Okay. Sure. It makes total sense to have a third party facilitate that and to expedite the process.
It's interesting when you read the booklet that the governor's people issued. It reads really well, I think, for cities in our state that have significant issues. It's almost overwhelming when you try to apply it to small municipalities such as Lake Placid. I don't know what communities smaller than us even how they deal with it. But then again, I'm reminded that we in our county don't have the county sheriff's department. I believe there are only 2 police departments that are engaged in the county, aside from Saranac Lake, that has a presence on the western end of the county. And that would be Ticonderoga and Lake Placid. So, it's, in my opinion, this is what we need to do. And I think the chief and I, after looking at this for a month, decided that some outside leadership on this would be appropriate.
So moved.
Any further discussion on the topic? Thank you for your comments, Jason, on that.
I think this is I agree with you, Mayor, in the sense that this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of work to be done. And it's important work. It's just hearing the public comment. I think the police department in itself has excelled, and it's just some tweaks and modifications.
No question about it. I'm reasonably confident that our police department will present well in the final analysis. I think we're all aware of the fact that our officers are well trained in their work. I'm not saying that I think training is one of the topics of this effort. Their ability to be more than just police officers is, in my mind, above and beyond. you know, they're on the scene when they need to be. I've had personal experiences in my own family where they're usually right there to assist our emergency services volunteers in the community. You find them in road accidents surrounding the area, usually even if others are taking charge, whether it's the state or our fire police, they're usually the first ones on the scene, and they take charge until and they stabilize until someone can get there that has jurisdiction. So there is a lot, and I'm looking forward actually to the opportunity to enlighten our community about their policies and how we operate. I think it's a valuable experience in that sense. And, we may learn some other things about our organization that maybe we're not aware of. So, and certainly as a board, I mean, the department has, and Scott will confirm it, they have voluminous operating procedures for just about everything under the sun. But those are not generally known outside of the department. I think that's a fair statement, Scott. So I am looking forward to this being a good experience, and we have a few months left to get this done. There's plenty of time for what we need to do. The time, I think she in her proposal put the scope of work and the time period out there so that by February we would be looking for, well, January there'd be a first draft, public comment and amendments to that draft, and then a final draft, which would be what would be put in the record books for the department. So with that said, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Call a motion. Unless there's other comment. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Our next item is in the form of a request from, on the behalf of St. Agnes School, Catherine Bemis, who proposes, given the COVID-19 impacts, she's proposing and asking for permissions for the students at St. Agnes, since it will not be a parade on Halloween, to be allowed to use Hillcrest to walk to Teddy Bear Park and back from St. Agnes School on October 30th in a mini parade, which will replace what they would normally be doing with Main Street. Their intent is to separate the groups so that they have 4 groups of under 50 students each, leaving from the school at 12:30 and finishing up at approximately 12:50. And I suspect that our law enforcement unit will provide some coverage for that event. And again, parents would be invited to watch from the side of the street with a 6-foot separation between family groups. And presumably everybody will be masked. I think that's the important thing that this doesn't say.
When I talked to her, I called Jay, and Jay more or less just said you have to comply with the governor's standards, and she knows that. The high school's doing a similar thing, but they're staying on their property, so that's why they.
High school or elementary? Elementary is doing that. They're saying they're going to walk around the building and go back in. And I think, I know the chief had mentioned to me that they were likely to, they'll have some manpower there for that one as well. Any other questions on that? If not, could I have a motion authorizing her request as presented, subject to the COVID requirements? Jason?
Second.
Peter? Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Anita, do you have anything further for this evening?
No, I do not.
It's kind of a light agenda tonight. Okay, moving on to the treasurer items. Before I get into the warrant, Mindy, do you have anything you wanted to bring the board up to date on?
Just that one of the warranted items is the smart board that we agreed to purchase. It is put together and operating, and we'll have its first station tomorrow through meetings. It's, I think, going to be a huge asset. Very nice, very easy to function and I think Patrick for coming to set it up because I would still be working on it otherwise.
Where's he going?
Right now, it's in the downstairs office here. It can fit in the elevator to go up to the board meeting room up there, or it can come in the board meeting room here. It's on,
It's
yeah,
on wheels.
yeah, it's on a motorized lift, so,
It's on wheels.
yes.
I had the privilege the other day of a live demonstration of the technology that this provides to us. And based on that, I believe we've discussed doing a live demonstration at one of our meetings or possibly workshop. Because I think you'll be impressed with the data and how significantly this can present it. It's something we can use in our board meetings.
Is this here in town or is this?
No, I'm sorry.
You don't use our TV.
I think,
This is solely purchased.
I think as others see it, just like the,
Between the four.
The four funds, yeah.
Four funds.
Right now, we have Patrick, who has GIS, water, sewer, and electric. He's not finished with water and sewer, but he can do the overlays for different presentations. Short-term rentals are also on it. It makes it much easier to see when it's that large.
Yeah.
Not to mention, when we get to the Main Street presentation portion, when that presentation is put together, it will be a nice way of displaying that as well. It's much larger. It has HD cables. Well, I have to order an HD cable for it. That will make it look just like a television screen. So it'll be nice and crystal clear. It's very crystal clear as it is right now, but this will be more in depth and make it more functional. But I changed one of the girls' passwords on it because you can hook it up to the internet, play with it. It's touchscreen the other day, just to make sure it worked. You know, I figured why not. But it can also be used as a whiteboard. It has a whiteboard app with pens.
I was going to say, it replaces the blackboard in schools. I'm
Yeah,
guessing,
there's several teachers who use it.
Yeah.
It's very.
which,
Well, and when giving a presentation too, it has a red pen and a black pen, so you can draw where you want people to focus on instead of having a little,
And you can manipulate websites.
Yeah. yeah, the functionality is there and it's very good. And all the ladies have now been trained on the Encode 10 utility billing and we go live. Our final production cutover is next week. Actually, no. Our final datable is Wednesday of this week and we go live next week. So we will be 100% on Encode 10 at that point.
Congratulations.
Yeah, you guys here last week, AUD,
Mhm.
what's happening there?
With this coming year's audit,
I mean, last fiscal year's audit.
that's done.
no,
Oh.
you're talking about
2000.
this summer?
Yeah.
2000.
To 1920
We're trying to work out dates.
with.
Yeah, with BSD. Electric will be here on November 4th.
It is, it's only October this time, it's not March of next year.
I know,
Well-
I don't want to get in the same situation.
Oh, let me,
I think it's right on your radar.
Oh, yeah.
let me just acknowledge the fact that I think Mindy has put in one hell of a year to get us back to a point where audits can be done when they should be done, and this is the normal time that they would be coming in. So if electric's starting, then they go to the general audit, the AUD report. You won't be seeing the next summer like you did this year.
Not to mention getting it.
But thank you for all of that effort. And Encode 10 certainly contributes to our ability to be on top of this stuff better. My excitement with Encode 10 really is that it's going to give each and every one of you the ability to, on your own time or otherwise, to go in and look at the budgets, to look at the departments. I had a
Push
brief,
it out. Yeah. Been a little busy.
I had a brief introduction the other day. She didn't give me the password, but But I thought, and Jason, I think you in particular will be very happy because in addition to the raw numbers, which is really the way we've been working for these last dozen years, it actually creates very quick, it converts everything to pie charts or graphs so that you can visualize what
12 years later.
what's going on.
Thank
But
you, Mindy.
I will tell you that over the 12
We're
years,
proud.
we've made amazing strides with our accounting systems to the point where we really are, for a small municipality, we're state of the art.
I would agree.
Anything else, Mindy?
No.
If not, we'll take a look at the bills tonight. This is a rather small one. Affidavit number 5 of the current budget year represents bills totaling $370,084.95. And in addition, utility refund checks to customers being issued totaling $475.47. Happy to go into the details as to how they break down, but this is,
Almost.
who was the second?
Third.
Any questions of any of the bills that were presented? If not, call a motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Main Street reconstruction project, and again, I'm keeping these items on here because they're open items that have continuing undertakings going on. I think as I think you're all aware, we did receive 5 bids for the Main Street work. That was last week. Seems like it was ages ago. But those that have been sent on to Ivan for review, and I believe we'll have a recommendation on those. I don't think we're ready for it tonight.
He just met his top one today.
Yeah.
So
I'm asking for some additional steps here, just simply so that we can fully inform the community. I've asked Mindy to request our outside auditors to look at the project now that we have hard numbers, to and taking into consideration the grant funding that we have, potential financing. One more item, which is the discussion with DOT, because a portion of what we're building is work that they otherwise would be doing, to be able to find the ultimate impacts on the village in terms of the total project, if it were to be awarded.
Mindy, did you ever nail down the term of EFC funding?
30 years.
Yes, 30 years.
30 years.
30 years, 30 years? All right.
I had a feeling it was going to be either 27 or 30. It's obviously a little bit easier to deal with, but with that information, we can now take a look at the impact on tax rates, if there is going to be any.
and zero interest.
If assuming that the state provides no money, it's $233,000 a year.
You're ahead of me.
So calculate.
Um,
It's on the bonus, you know. Sure, it's an increase in 233.
I have a meeting Wednesday. I believe the Main Street, there's a subcommittee that's been working on a presentation to put all of this together so that we can, and Mindy mentioned that we'll have equipment, we'll really be able to see it in good detail. What the Main Street project entails, not only in terms of the numbers, but also in terms of the appearances, the finishes, and it's an involved project. I think that's a fair statement.
It's not just 100% virtual, correct? Where somebody can download go to the website
We
and
will be able to eventually. The intent is to put it up on the village website, but I'm now that we've got this other technology, I'm kind of interested in seeing how that might be used.
we can link to Roost or
That's right.
you should be able to link.
That's right. So generally, we will make it as public as we can possibly make it, given the limitations of COVID. It would be much more enjoyable, I think, to have 200 or 300 people in a meeting room where they can touch and feel and offer their questions and comments, but here we are, it's November, almost November, and we're still not able to do that.
We will.
Land use code update. Art, any meetings there, developments?
Yeah, we've got an RFP that's gone out, and we're hoping by December 24th to hire the group that's going to come in and look things over, make a recommendation. And that really encompasses also what's happening with short-term rental update. And
Hire is in, it goes to the boards that date, or what's the definition of hire? You're going to recommend it then?
Yeah,
hoping by December 24th. That's
I think I can add something there. There's a meeting tomorrow with mayor, myself, supervisor, Jay, and maybe Dean. The RFP has not been approved by me and has not been approved by Ron. And
as
that
far
was-
as from
That
the
was a
group.
premature posting on the town website. It'll be, I hope it's been taken down and it'll be modified before it goes out. It is not for short-term rentals. That might be a facet of it, but there's separate issues.
Because I thought the overall, to Janet's point, I thought it was just part of the motivating factor was short-term rentals, but it was a more all-encompassing sort of look.
It is, it's part of it, it's all together.
It is.
You don't want to mistake the fact that the peer focus is.
Somehow it got on the town board agenda the other night and was acted upon and put up on the website, but we had not yet signed off on it. So that meeting is taking place tomorrow at 4 with
You and I and Jay and Ron, and I don't know if Dean's going to be there or not.
plus our 2 liaison officers, Emily and Art.
Okay.
So that's where we're at on that project. Short-term rental update. The only thing I want to comment on today, and it's something that Mindy and our accounting department brought to our attention over the weekend. When the short-term rental legislation was passed, there was language in the legislation which required that any property operating as a short-term vacation rental property would be required by to have a water meter on its water, and if not, to have one installed. In fact, we learned that although the applications have mostly come in and done processed and permits have been issued, that nothing more was done. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mindy, on this. To the extent that the village issued a letter to each one of the, I believe, 7.5 pages, 162 properties, advising them of the requirement under that legislation that they have a meter installed on their water. And we first realized that they were not being informed of that as the applications were being processed. So no fault on the applicant's part, but communications was not sufficient. And therefore, you, I'm sure, are hearing complaints from some of these 162 properties.
We couldn't use that as an excuse, if you will, to deny the application, because
It's too late.
I mean, just like similar to inspecting chimneys and
Yeah.
inspecting septic systems, we couldn't deny them the permit because there's no way that.
But what should,
Get to it.
what should have
True,
been,
but what is our process moving
well,
forward?
here's the issue. When those applications come into host compliance, they should have received a notification that they need to communicate with the village.
Yeah, that's.
And they also, I'm told, I haven't seen the application myself, that the applicant has to check off whether they have a meter or not. So,
It's where we get the 162.
So they're in the process, and again, this can happen when I think you've got 2 municipalities trying to convey stuff out. And
I don't know that there's a checkbox that says, do you have a meter or not on the application? Because Sharon went through every single person on the list and wrote down whether or not they had a meter after the fact. She got a list from Britt and went through every single person on that list to see if they had it. That's how we got 162 people. Some of those people have meters. Some of them have meters from when we did the grant program and installed meters. Those meters don't work with our current metering system, so they have to be replaced. There was an assumption that there was a possibility that we could just replace the heads. They don't fit, it's not gonna work, so they have to be replaced. Some people have meters from 3 years ago when they bought the property that they were made to have put in, but were never turned on. So, I mean, we have a slew of people who are irritated, upset that we're making them spend money, stating that they're not aware of the
But it's in the local law.
it is.
Okay, so
One thing that I got from somebody,
I'm less
and-
empathetic about that, so how do we move forward to get them?
well, and I've gone back and forth. I think what most of them are upset about, and I questioned, well, you signed up for to be a vacation rental, only because I heard it from somebody else. Nobody made us aware because we live in a different states and we weren't on Facebook, we weren't on the website, which is their own problem, that we even needed to do this. So I had to send out copies of the law so people could see it.
Mhm.
But we've gotten a lot of, the girls have gotten yelled at a lot.
So do you remind them that they should have reviewed the short-term rental law and that? It's not necessarily our responsibility.
So host compliance, I mean, if we did it again, we
Mhm.
would have
Or we can make
Well,
it a law.
made them to.
The woman I spoke with today said she was given a list of things that had to be done. And she complied with everything on that list. And nowhere on that list did it say she had to get a water meter. Now, had she read the law, she would have seen it in the miscellaneous section, not in the top section, but in the miscellaneous section, I think it's 11.6. Because I've looked at the law so many times. But and it's one line that says it will be provided by the village. And I actually called Janet to make sure we didn't have to physically pay for the meter going into their house, because that was the way she was
The
reading it.
water and sewer that are
That's the service.
provided by us.
I reiterated to her and she was fine after that. But she's like, it wasn't on the list of things that I had to do.
So
that I got.
I guess there are two things we need to address moving forward is to update the application process in order to include that component of it. And then the other two is design or create a plan to resolve the outstanding 162.
We've heard from, I would say, oh my gosh, I think I've heard from 30 people myself. And the ladies downstairs have probably heard from 80. The phone rings constantly. We've gotten a lot of texts in already as well. One of their big things, they don't know what size meter they need. We don't know what size meter they need because we don't know what size house they have. So we're having them send a check for the smallest amount and we'll bill them for any residual.
For the installation of a meter.
Well, for the actual meter itself.
The meter, okay.
They're buying the meters,
okay.
we're installing them.
So,
We don't know if it's
so you're
3/8
telling me,
or 5/6 or 5/8 or whatever it is, because it's a range in prices.
sure, so what you're telling me is we're already moving in the process of.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
but we're dealing with the phone calls as they go.
I just
My
want
phone
you
rings off
all
the hook all day.
to be informed of what we're experiencing and then what steps are being taken to adjust it. But
Have we touched base with health compliance yet about that? In order to-
we've actually had a meeting today, Mindy and I met with the supervisor, because the communications line is through the town to the code office.
I can see how it's falls through the crack because anyone in the town is required to have a meter, or it doesn't necessarily apply to those that are in the village.
You know, I think we'll eventually work this through and, but it is correct that apparently the application does not alert the property owner to that requirement, even though the law requires it. So
Wendy, has anyone refused to allow access yet?
No,
well, remember that the code officer has the ultimate leverage, which is he can revoke the permit if there's that's probably, hopefully that's not even going to get triggered here.
well, and I think another issue we had today, there was a call sent upstairs because somebody had a question about the application, where was it on the application, and it was sent up upstairs. And the response that was given back to our office was, it's not my problem.
And yet they're the ones that are designing and issuing it. So we're working through the issues here and
You said that.
in the meantime.
We wanted to let her head back, but yeah. People like class a little bit long. You're not gonna act like a teen, you can't have it.
Anything else on that? If not, I'd ask Art if there's been any updates recently on the government communication.
She's just still working
I
on
got thick
website.
skin, it's all good.
There's no new
Any
updates.
further meetings, Anita?
No,
Okay.
as Art said, she's working on it. She said maybe sometime in November she'd be ready to present to the board.
Okay. And
Or
actually,
just a side note, everyone feel free to sign up for e-billing come next month, because we will have it.
What?
Our electric bills are going, you'll have the option to set up for e-bills instead of paper bills.
What? Amazing.
can you describe the
I love
process a
this.
little bit? What does that involve?
Saving trees.
Is there a cost to the customer?
No, there's no cost to the customer, it's a huge cost savings to us. Anybody who pays their bill online currently will get an email that says, if you want to sign up for e-billing, it's an automated thing that's just going to go out, and it will walk you through the process. And then on the bottom of our bills, we're going to put, if you'd like to sign up for e-billing, please send us your email address and we can push it out that way. There's
Is there
no,
any for a program?
yes, there's no added cost for it. It's all included. And then I'm hoping within the next 2 weeks, I will also have the ability to do text message push notifications in case we have a major power outage or anything like that.
Stamps, this money, paper and stamps, is that?
Huge,
Huge
huge.
savings here.
And we have had more people ask for e-bills than ever before. I've gotten so many emails from people.
Yeah, well,
So this is a direct charge to their,
It's just an email that goes out from
Like you go,
us, so there's no charge.
no, you don't send a physical bill out.
No.
No.
Places.
like my cell phone bill, every other Spectrum bill, everything is sent via email, and then I get within the app. I understand we don't have an app. Now,
Oh,
Can they pay?
But it will give you the option on your email to go direct to the website and pay your bill.
so here's the dilemma. So like my question is, and I know this is the public component of it, and we don't necessarily have to elaborate on it, but I understood that we didn't entirely embrace a sort of electronic form because there is the credit cards do take a percentage, so it does.
It's
it will
still
not-
charged back to the customer just like it is currently.
So it does cost people more.
The
Would there be enough?
$2.95 fee, yeah,
How much is that?
$2.95
$295?
if you pay for it on e-bill. So if you pay for it online, you're still the same fee as if you were to get a paper bill and go online and pay your bill.
So-
That was really my,
But they can get a bill by email and mail
Correct.
Yep.
it. So
So, yeah, but
that's 50.
we're like 50, we're only halfway to modern age. And I'm just,
We're working on it, we're working on
like
it.
sort of contact person paying, we come in and they can pay with, is there an opportunity for you to evaluate potential savings, the paper savings, if we move that in order to be able to not have that fee per se
So
for people to pay
I've
that way?
already spoken to Open Edge, which is the preferred provider for Tyler Technologies, who houses our accounting program. Their fees are less than our current fees. If we hit a mass amount, the reason NICEAG can do it and Spectrum can do it, they have a large quantity of people who are
Yes.
paying in line.
Yeah.
So it's beneficial to them and they get a break on their charges. If we get to that point, we will also get a break on our charges. However, right now I'm looking at a different credit card provider to see if it will balance out slightly.
Okay.
So at least it won't be a $2.95 fee, maybe it'll be a $1.25 fee to
Okay.
start.
Okay.
I'm not
I think that would be,
100% sure.
that would be a
Yes.
substantial reduction and it would encourage more payments if it's only $1. I'm cheap, so an extra $3 or so, like,
Well, and
I'd rather hand
we'll also push out that people can sign up for draft, which costs them nothing.
more Republican. What's
Or
that?
the,
Yeah.
Now with
you
your
can
money.
sign up that way. People can sign up for auto deduct, which costs them nothing.
Yeah,
So
but
you figure-
you have to deposit some money, and I thought we kind of wanted to move away from like having a sort of a repository of other people's money. And then
No, it's no deposit of money, so you
Oh,
just
it
set it up for an auto draft.
Oh, okay.
So
The
you
problem,
pull the same time every month.
the problem why people might not like that, for example, because their bills fluctuate.
Yes.
So usually people like auto deduct, and they know every month it's a set fee.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, when your bill goes from $50 in the summertime to $300 in the wintertime, you might not want it deducted at the same time every month, depending on your income. So I think that's why, just like Janet pointed out, we have less people on draft and more people who do it online.
Okay, so
But,
you are exploring, so,
Yes,
because that's been widely asked, and my response has been, it's expensive for a small municipality like ourselves in order to be able to provide that. So the threshold hasn't been crossed.
I'm working on it. I'm telling
I'm
you.
excited. The fact that,
I don't want anybody to miss one of the points that Mindy commented on, and that is the fact that with the completion of our updates on our accounting system, the ability to send out a message to every single property that we have an electric meter involved with or an electric account is becoming possible. The mechanism very easily is that the customer provides the village with an email address or a text number. And in the event we have a power outage, such as we did in September, we can put a blast out to, literally, if we have all the addresses, we can put it out to every account in the electric department, which would logically represent every property owner in the 12946 footprint. Whether we'll ever get 100% of them, that's because that's voluntary on the part of the property owner or not, we don't know. But that is something that prior to this last upgrade, we were not able to work with. So communications like that would be very, very useful in the instance of an emergency, for example.
We're working there. We're headed that direction, trying to
And
increase our communication.
from my perspective, there wasn't any additional cost, which I like very much.
Yes, that was an added feature.
So that's good. Anything else under those groups? I think the mayor items tonight, I noticed I don't have anything down there, and that's probably because I don't have anything to add to what we've already discussed. So I'll move on to commissioner reports. Is there anything there? See,
Just the sidewalk project is 99% done. They're down to just minimal items on the punch list. Yeah, it does look very nice. And one last detail that has to be done is that when the plaque for Grace was put in, when they redid Grace from East Dix, they put it on the other side of the granite, they put it in upside down, so they now have to figure out how to chisel it out or get it out and flip it over.
Yeah.
That's one of the last little details, because
I still
What's
have a-
upside down?
plaque,
the
designation.
stone.
They renamed a peak a
Oh,
few years ago, and the new peak, the current peak
Grace.
name is Grace.
that's
And
all.
unfortunately,
She got put in upside
she
down.
got put in
So it
upside
says
down.
East Dix?
No. That's what these- all these-
And of course, it's been
Oh,
glued.
right.
and
I think it was East Dix.
Yeah.
I think I liked it pretty much.
But it does look very nice.
Mhm. And Nice, it's nice that it doesn't dip when you go into the driveways anymore.
So-
It's nice.
And not to prolong this particular conversation, Peter mentioned that we are going to be unable to salt the sidewalk, which in essence is going to be beneficial to Mirror Lake, but we
The new
are
sidewalk.
the new sidewalk. So
Oh,
we
it's
do
good.
have, DPW does have a plan in process for signage and
Sand.
alternative.
Um,
Okay.
I'm happy to report on that. There was a meeting of the Ausable River Salt Reduction Task Force, which Brad and I both are members of. And the plan for the sidewalk is to use, we have some grit, which is very, very fine stone that's actually we were buying it originally to fill the joints between the Cambridge stones that we're no longer using. But it works quite effectively on a hard surface such as that. So we have that, and of course, we'll be using sand, but we want to give the sidewalk as much opportunity to cure as possible. And salt doesn't make it any better. So we will not be using salt this year unless it's really extreme.
If it's raining, you have no choice.
We have the new equipment, right, from the,
We do have the live edge plow that was provided under a grant that, let's say, the River Watershed Association and the Lake Champlain Basin had arranged for both the town and the village. We each have similar equipment, and that will be put into use this year. The principal benefit of a live edge plow is that the cutter bar that scrapes the surface is able to produce a cleaner surface, meaning that there's less ice left on the road surface, and therefore hopefully less salt needs to be applied to do that. At the same time, our primary spreader for the roads has a device on it that monitors and measures the output of whether it's salt or sand, whatever we're outputting from that truck. It would be salt. And I believe one is being installed on one of the smaller pickups, which is used for side roads. So we've got that. Likewise, the equipment that goes along our sidewalks has some monitoring equipment on it. So what this is providing to the task force is obviously measurements of how much and where and when we're applying ice removers. The next big project that the group recognizes that it will need to do is, in addition to the support that the town and village are providing in this effort, is to begin to work with the private parking lots, which there are several around Lake Placid, and whoever the contractors are that maintain their parking lots in the wintertime. Several of them have direct flows into the watershed, but ultimately they all get to the watershed one way or another. So this effort is, I would say, is just beginning. I think the task force was made aware of the fact that this past year, for the first time, it was a lesser reduction, certainly from the village. We used about 30% less salt last winter, which is probably a combination of better weather conditions and also maybe part of a conscious effort to use less. As a result of that, or partly as a result of that, Mirror Lake this year turned over, which is the term they use, and performed more like a lake without the heavy water that salt creates, not turning over. So who knows? It's a function of learning. You're going to see some of the correspondence in your packet. I provided a news release that came out entitled Partnerships for Freshwater Protection. I did it mostly to remind everybody that we provided approval and authorization for some equipment to be installed in the center of Mirror Lake, which continues to work year-round to measure the different effects of the lake, depending on the time of year and what may be flowing into it. And I thought it was particularly interesting tonight because I hadn't really connected the pigeon problem to Mirror Lake, but obviously if we've got large numbers of pigeons and this stuff is washing into the stormwater drains, potentially we're washing toxic material into the very lake that we're trying to protect. So I think we have plenty of reason for wanting to address the pigeon issue to the extent we're allowed to.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but we're starting to see the benefit of our switch at the firehouse for our electric, even though it's not completed yet. All the T's aren't crossed, the I's aren't dotted. We did do work on the substation by the firehouse and we were able to bypass it and backbeat all of our electric customers from powerhouse substation. And that's a first. Otherwise, we would have had to shut everyone down while we were working perform the work. So there's our first benefit.
Thank you for that.
It's important.
Anything else?
Boy, when you go down and look at that, if any of you have been down, it looks like it's how it should have been all along, but forget all the work that went into it.
Well done. And I understand that we're still working up on the Sandpoint Peninsula with the in replacing the submarine cable in the lake that had gone bad.
Heard they had a new worker out there.
I did too.
It's time.
In any event,
They make you get in the water?
No,
I think you're
It's on workers' comp.
I think this.
yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. I think this is the year when we can look back, and I think all of our departments had projects that were, that will benefit the community in the long term. And you know, the sidewalk project that people are thrilled with, the substation project with the new switching devices absolutely is going to give us some opportunity to manage our power when one or the other substations might not be able to be in operation. So as we look around, we have a lot going on and all of our departments, in my opinion, are quite busy.
Well, one last thing, on Saturday, they held a training exercise at the old hospital for the fire department. And that ran about 5 hours. It was very good. It was well attended by 4 different fire departments, about 30 people, most of their new people.
And this basically was a large part of it was addressing training that an interior firefighter, because we have firefighters that are not certified to go inside a burning building. We have others that do. So to create an atmosphere where they could train and go into a smoke-filled building and achieve certain objectives that they need for their credentialing was great. And the fact that we could have our neighboring communities around us participating was especially nice to see.
You guys know if they're keeping the heat on this winter?
There's no heat in the old hospital building that's shut down.
Yeah, and they're not cleaning the drains on the roof, and the water's collecting up there, and vandals have broken in. They had to go in and clean the inside so it wasn't, glass all over the floor for the firemen.
I think the town.
Pigeons?
Didn't see any pigeons.
Oh, perfect place for them.
Right.
Wouldn't it?
Only if it was in walking distance.
Okay, I mentioned the items of correspondence. I mentioned the installation of the monitors in Mirror Lake by the Sago River Group. We also had a memorandum, and this is just a follow up on the Halloween plans that are taking place from Sonia Franklin, who, on behalf of the elementary school, thanks for your help with the Halloween parade at noon on the 30th. We are going ahead with our plan to have a parade here on school grounds. We will stream it through our district Facebook page and then offer it later on our YouTube channel. Thank goodness we have virtual access to those things. Andy, thank you for taking class pictures. The kids will love that. If anyone has any questions, you're free to contact me. This is Sonia Franklin. It may not be quite the excitement that usual parade offers, but we will still be able to give the students a Halloween event, and that's important to us. So at least our young members of the community are going to be able to celebrate Halloween a little bit. It's surprising because Halloween has become, if anything, it's as big as Thanksgiving and Christmas, I guess, in some areas. And given that the weather's warmer, it's easier too. Is there anything else that any of you wish to bring up in front of the board tonight? If not, I will ask anyone that may be listening in virtually if there are questions or comments that you wish to offer at this time.
Yes, I would like to ask if it would be possible. My name's Thomas Dick, and good evening to everybody here on the board. I've been monitoring and very interesting discussions. One thing that I'm interested in is Parkside Drive. The traffic coming down through there sometimes seems to be a bit speedy. I was wondering if it would be at all possible to have some signs at the ends of in the beginning of it, from basically where the children are being picked up on Parkside Drive, because we do have children again on Parkside Drive, and maybe it's in the school zone, I'm pretty sure. If they could be maybe held to 20 miles per hour going down through there, if that's possible, at least advising that it is a school zone and there are children at play.
Tom, I'm happy to respond to that. Parkside certainly is in the sight line of the board. We did, at a previous meeting a month ago, ask the commissioners and the police department and DPW, to the extent they're needed, to look at all of our speed limits in the village. And that project is probably going to take a period of time to get it all done. But certainly speed limits are one of the focuses that we're just looking at it. I've been looking at how many years, Anita, history here on vehicle and traffic law?
Back to the 40s.
Yeah. Trying to understand, because it's interesting, we kind of cherry pick streets depending upon needs over the years, and legislation gets passed to make an adjustment. But there's ultimately, we end up with a stack of folders like this of various laws. And I'm trying to collate all of those so that we know exactly what we have currently in the local laws, and then I think it's the departments and the commissioners work to make some recommendations. Tom will take that under advisement. I certainly agree with you that Parkside has been busy this summer, and it's probably not the only thing that we ought to be considering. We probably ought to consider the fact that there's only about virtually there's a lane and a half for a vehicle to move on there, and that's it. It's not really a 2-lane road as it's being used today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And
Would you be a proponent of making it a one-way heading south, right?
Yeah.
thank you very much for hearing my explanation there of what may be possible for, getting the speed limit a little bit more in the realm of a school zone, because, they do go down through there. Not everybody. I mean, most people are pretty good, but I think some signs would maybe remind people that they could slow down. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else?
Craig, I do have just a comment to make about the pigeons. So on the Shea Property building on Main Street, it is a real nuisance because they seem to nest up on Ed Creel's building, and then all their droppings come on to Shea Properties. So I'm glad it's being addressed, and I just wanted to let you know that it's a problem for us on Main Street.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Emily, do you have any? Liz, I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I just had one question about the police reform. What is the consultant going to be looking at? All of the policies, or are there specific ones?
There's a full proposal that was put out, Liz, with the agenda, and I think you can review that, and you'll find all of the information that you need is there. I'm correct, am I not?
Yeah, the proposal did go out with it. So if you have any follow-up questions, then please let me or the mayor know.
If you'd like to give me a call in the morning, or Anita, either one of us will be happy to dig that out for you.
Great, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Anything else? If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Adjourn the meeting.
Scott?
Second.
Peter seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned.